Alright, so you've completed your solution in point form. It's easy now for the marker to mark and to give you maximum marks because of your layout. So now, what do? So you've completed your question in the time allocated. What's the next step? When you are doing practice questions at home, you are able to really see the effects of exam technique and to really see how you need to improve on your time management. The best way to do it is stop writing in the time allocated. Stop. If you feel that you had more to do, more to write, change your pen color and finish up in a new pen color. So finish up with everything. Finish, add in all points you feel you need to include. Now that they're in a different color pen, you can actually see what you managed to get, the maximum marks you managed to get in the time, and the different color pen now, you can see what you lost because of your time skills. And what that will do is will highlight, what you're doing wrong. Are you starting off a question, rushing in, and not actually getting the relevant marks because you've rushed in, but the later or the longer you spend answering that, you're starting to get maximum marks? Or are you getting maximum marks up front and actually losing marks out later? In which case, you can be happy that you are using your time effectively, and you need to move on when you start to write stuff that doesn't quite feel that correct. Okay, now we get to marking. So guys, this is where I feel you struggle the most, and unfortunately it's something that you have to do. You cannot say, please will you mark it because you're not biased. You have to learn to not be biased, and the only way you're going to get that is to mark as many times as possible. What I will say is that I'm happy if you do a question and the solution is not on the mark plan. So it's not just something that's differently worded to yours. If you've worded it differently but you're getting the same points across, you get that mark. Okay, but it's something that's completely not touched on the mark plan. Then I'm happy for you to pop me an email. Hi Candace, I did question 2.A. These are some points I had on my solution that aren't on the mark plan. Would I get them? Then I can go and look at the question and look at the solution, and I can say, no, you wouldn't have got those because the question specifically asked you to focus here, and that is actually deviating. Or yes, valid question, you definitely would have got that. It would be on a mark plan, or the markers will use professional judgment in marking, and they have got some leeway to give marks that aren't actually on the mark plan. Okay, and guys, this is across the board through from any university's mark plan through to your board's mark plan. Okay, so there will be marks that are not on a solution that you would get the mark on. So I'm very happy for you to send me those, and we can see, are you going to get those marks or not? All right, so how do I go about marking? You actually need to do a recon when you mark. What I need you to do a recon of, I need you to do a recon of the solution the actual solution to your solution and to the scenario. So if I were to draw it out for you, because that sometimes doesn't really make too much sense. What I mean, I want you to put, here is your the actual solution to the question. That's the actual solution to the question. Here is the scenario. That's the scenario. That was the information that the question was based on. And here is your solution. So basically, if you had your A4 solution stapled with all the different pages behind it and the scenario with the different pages behind it and yours, and you all had this on your desk. So here is your desk. Okay, you've got those 3 pieces of papers on your desk. What you need to do first is you need to take your solution and you need to go into the actual solution. And you need to tick all of the things that are on the actual solution that you got. Okay? Then there might be items here in your solution which are not on the solution. These are the ones that you are potentially going to email me with. Would I have got those marks for this question? Okay. Now what I should have done is I should have dealt with all of them on my solution. Okay. Then I need to do from the actual solution to the scenario for everything I didn't get. So I suggest, guys, when you're doing your solution to the actual and you've ticked yours off here, go and tick them off here in the actual solution. And then also so now you've got the ticks on each side, so you know what you did get. Then on the items where you don't have any tick, these are the ones you're going into the scenario. And you have to go and find the information that's in here that resulted in that mark. Okay, because you missed that point. You didn't get it. So there was information in the scenario that you didn't identify. So you take your solution, take it to the actual solution, mark off everything that you got that is on the actual solution. Anything that is on your solution that's not there, you can either decide for yourself if you should get it or not, or you can email me, would I get this mark or not. Now I've completed mine. My solution, everything on it has been marked. So now I go to the actual. For everything that I did get that I marked on mine, I cross it off on the actual solution, and now I'm only left with the points that are on the actual solution that haven't got a tick next to them. I didn't pick those up. These are the ones I go into the information and I find what information resulted in that mark. So if my question was risk at the financial statement level and they picked up that company was listed and therefore there's going concern risk if they don't comply with the listing requirements. That was their risk at the financial statement level. I didn't pick that up. I need to go into the scenario, and where I see listed, I need to say, okay, I didn't see that it was listed. Either I didn't know that a listed entity resulted in a risk at the financial statement level, or I did know and I just didn't see it. Either way, I'm actually now finding out why and where I'm going wrong. So at the end of this, after I've done this little recon, I need to have a summary. And guys, for every question you do, I suggest you have a summary. And the summary is just key things you learned in that question. So if, for instance, I didn't know that a listed entity resulted in a risk at the financial statement level, in my summary, I would say a listed entity is a risk at the financial statement level. And why? Just so that I make sure I really do understand that. Okay, now obviously guys, in big questions that are out of 100 and you getting 40%, there are going to be 60 things, 60 answers you didn't get. Now you can't write them down. So this summary just needs to be of your key learning points. And it can be something like this: a listed entity is a risk, or it could be generalized things like I picked up in my scenario that I am not reading the questions properly. I picked up, sorry, that's really bad. I picked up in doing this recon that I'm not answering the correct required. And so now what I know is that my solution to that is to spend more time understanding what is expected of me. Okay, so not just rushing in. Or I see that I'm starting to answer the questions correctly initially, and then I start repeating myself or wafting. So then I need to make this note that I don't repeat. As soon as I start to lose track, I need to move on. So basically, I've got a summary. Guys, please note this word, summary. You cannot go and rewrite the solution. If you rewrite the solution, have you learned anything? No. And this here, guys, I've said is of your key learning points. So it's something that you really understand from this and that you will take going forward, because it's crucial for me to make sure I get these correct points or this new way of answering, because I have analyzed my solution effectively. Okay, this will also highlight exam technique, okay, that I've identified I'm not actually adhering to. So note that, the exam technique. Or what I mean by that, if a question says to you, pick up the risk at the assertion level, and the solution goes and lists them under assertions, and my solution is just all over the show, then I can see, okay, maybe I should actually go, when I'm asked to do a question with this kind of layout, maybe my layout should be like that. Now you know that every time you get that kind of question, risks at the assertion level, you are going to go and put your assertions down and follow that layout versus just putting everything down together. So I don't necessarily only learn information that I didn't know. I also learn techniques or ways of answering or layouts of answering questions, so that the end of the day, guys, I don't make the same mistakes. Because, guys, I can tell you now, that is what I pick up time and time again. Students keep making the same mistakes. No, you need to physically see the mistakes you're making to start to rectify them. If you just do the question, see the solution, oh, I didn't know that, I know it now, it's fine, never actually going to learn anything. Why is this summary so important? Because I don't ever want you to redo a question. Once you've done that question and you've marked that question, you know that question. Your brain will remember certain points in the solution, not know them, remember them. And there's a difference between knowing and understanding versus remembering. You want to be on the knowing and understanding side, not the remembering side. So I never want to go and answer that question again with the solution that I'd actually seen and remember, because I don't know it. And now you ask me a question very similar, but with a different scenario, and I don't, my brain doesn't know to link the two, to link what it remembered from the last question to this one. But if I understood it, it would know that. So why I want this summary is because I won't ever redo this question, but what I will do is I will go back to the summary. So this nice summary, guys, on any question that you do, this summary becomes your exam and test preparation. And you'll start to see that I'm going to give you tutorials to do on a weekly basis. You're going to do those, and in the week before the test, you're just going to do the tutorials that I still go and recommend. So I'm not going to be able to give you a whole bunch of new questions the week before the test for you to go and do, because I want you now to study for the test. Your studying for the test starts from day one. And every question you do is in preparation for your test or your exam. And in order for me to not have to redo a question, all I have to do is go back and look at the summary. But if I haven't done a summary of every question, it means you're going to go and pick up the solution of that question, you're going to read through it, and you're just wasting time. As soon as your brain sees that summary, it's going to remember the exact question and remember the things you did that you didn't quite nail. And that's what you want to be doing throughout the year. That's where your learning takes place, because that summary was created by you on the learning points, the points that you understood versus the points that you remember. All right. Just lastly, guys, if you have a question that is legislative or it would be legislative because it would be compliance or non-compliance based on your legislation. So a question around a specific legislation, I'll give you King, Companies Act, CPC, APA, rules regarding improper conduct, all of those. And the question is asking you for compliance, or it is non-compliance. So have they complied with the actual legislation. There is a technique in answering, and again, I think it makes sense in terms of your technique. Your first point, you obviously need to identify the legislation or the regulation that you actually are having to assess compliance with. You need to then note in your point form the actual paragraph or rule from this legislation. So I put down the theory of the legislation. Then I put down the information in the scenario that leads me to believe that they did comply or that they didn't. And then I conclude. So if I were to give an example and I were to say that I have to discuss compliance or non-compliance with the Companies Act, and I pick up its Companies Act, and I've seen that in the scenario it is a public company and they are not being audited. That's the information in the scenario. So I note the actual paragraph or the rule in the regulation. So the regulation is the Companies Act, because you don't actually have to put down the number of the paragraph or whatever, so, or the rule. So all I'm going to say is Companies Act requires all public companies are audited. The information in the scenario, this public company is not audited. My conclusion, therefore non-compliance. Guys, this is a step-by-step process, so you don't need to write these info in the scenario, note the actual paragraph, and identify the regulation. You just actually have to follow the steps. So my first step would be, this is Companies Act. My second step noted in my scenario would be Companies Act requires that all public companies are audited. My third point in my solution would be, this public company is not audited, therefore non-compliance. Okay, so that's just a little bit of specific for when I'm doing something with regards to compliance versus non-compliance, and it's legislative or regulatory based. My concern with saying do this all the time is that you will be wasting time. So it's crucial to make sure that I'm only kind of following this process of actually putting the theory down when I'm picking up non-compliance. All right, so we've looked at what I expect from you. Guys, when I say this, you have reading time of 30% and 1.5 minutes of writing time. I'm not saying that this is in your tests or exams. This information is in every question you do. So for every question, every tutorial that I want you to prepare for the tutorial, I want you to have followed under exam conditions. I want you to have first worked out your reading time, which is 30%, of the actual marks, and I stick to that. I read for that amount of time. Then I stop, and then I go and I work out my writing time per each required. Under this process now, working out how much time I have, ranking my questions, reading every required so that I understand, and sticking to my time. When I am writing, I'm starting with the notes that I made when I read the scenario, and I'm jotting them down in point form. When I've completed everything, I stop, and if I have points that I need to make that I didn't get the time to, I'm going to change the color just so that I can see where I am losing time, where I'm losing maximum marks because I didn't get these down. And I can make changes here. So if I, like we said, if I'm finding that I'm getting marks up front and then I start to lose, then I stop getting marks the more I go on. Then I can adapt it by saying, get the marks that I know I'm getting, and then stop and move on. Give my brain some time to think about it while I move on and I'm getting all the marks. Or if I don't get marks up front, but I get them towards the end of my solution for a specific question, then what I have to do, I need to read the required again, take some time to analyze what is asked of me, and then only start writing when I'm comfortable. Alright, and then I have to mark by doing a recon to make sure that I am learning, and I'll know that I'm learning because I'll have my summary with my learning points. Alright guys, next week you've got some pre-reading to do based on the lecture. I need you to read study unit 1 and study unit 2 of tutorial 102, which is the audit process and the pre-engagement. We will look at the tutorial in class so that you can see that I'm working through the tutorial and what you have read is what we are covering in class. Alright, I hope this helps you. I need you to start using this from now onwards, and we'll keep coming back to this when we work through a tutorial just to make sure that you are implementing the marking correctly and you are actually doing the question with the best exam technique possible. Alright, have a fabulous weekend.